Hello. So this is Katie. She is the coordinator of Manchester Veg People, which is the main thing that we're going to talk about today, which is a co-op of organic growers, commercial growers in and around Greater Manchester, and then buyers within Greater Manchester. Kate, you'll go on a bit more to describe what that is. I'm Helen, I'm from the Kindling Trust, and we work on various different projects which we'll sort of refer to throughout this because it sort of makes up the package that is trying to help create a more sustainable food system in Manchester. And our role was that we helped set up, we kind of developed the model through a lot of the research that it looks like you're doing as well, of talking to different projects all around the country and all this sort of thing. So we did a lot of that, came up with a model that we thought might work, and then worked with growers and buyers to help set up Manchester Veg People. So just to start with, just to say we aren't economically viable yet, just to warn you. But it's probably, was it 13 or 30 years?
13.
1, 3. Okay, we've got a while to go.
Yeah.
There's growing communities. So we're not yet, but we do believe it is. We believe it's possible, and part of it is about making this model viable, but part of it was very much about making growing organic food a viable business for growers. So it's kind of the two things we're working on, which we'll go on to talk about a bit more. But basically, I'm just going to quickly just put it in context, then Kate is going to describe exactly what Manchester Veg People is and what it isn't, and issues around that. And then Chiara sent us some questions about kind of, what was your market, what was your producers, what skills did you need? So we're going to look at how we set up Manchester Veg People by looking at those, then bring it up to date a bit about sort of some of the figures and what you need, hopefully, to make it viable. And then we'll just look at it as part of a wider package and how to try and what's key in making it work. And then later on we're going to look at you lot and you're going to do the work about saying, well, up here, hooray, or something like it. So just very briefly to say where it started from was basically probably a similar situation to here, that in Manchester, lots of people were working on food. It was when the local food fund came out and suddenly everyone was working on food, which was totally amazing, except that no one was talking to each other about it, and it was a bit like, and so that was a bit mad. And then the other thing was that growers, commercial growers, of which there aren't very many really, organic ones, weren't talking to each other, which is quite normal as well, because people tend not to talk to each other, bizarrely. But anyway, there was 1 year where they grew the same thing. The very few growers that existed grew the same thing, and it basically meant that the prices got really, low. And some of them had to plough in a field of one of the crops because they were both growing it, and it was just really awful, and it was just like, what's going on when there's so few growers? How does this have to happen? And at the same time, the buyers were kind of saying, you'd kind of go around and see all these restaurants saying locally sourced vegetables, and we'd just be like, oh, that's interesting, because none of them are buying from the buyers that we know that are local buyers. And so it was just one of those things where they were all buying from Smithfield Market, which was buying from all over the country and all over the world, and it was just like, it's not really local. So, and also kind of defining what is sustainable food and thinking about that. So lots of things we were thinking about. And what we decided to do as Kindling was to say, we don't know enough about this as city kids living here and not growers and not buyers. So we went around and got in touch with, worked with some of the growers for a bit, found out what the main issues were for them, talked to some of the buyers and looked at, well, what are the obstacles to buying sustainable food, what are the obstacles to supplying Manchester with sustainable food. And then we got everyone together in a thing called Feed in Manchester, which was about bringing practitioners together who want to create a more sustainable food system. So it's a very practical thing, and said, let's look at whether we can work on some of these solutions together. And the issues that came up for some of the growers were things like, prices, which came up for the buyers, but from completely the opposite angle, funnily enough. So, growers saying that we can't get the right price, it doesn't cover cost of production, we can never be sick, we can never take holidays at certain times of year because we can't afford to pay, bring labour in, that sort of thing. Buyers saying it's too expensive, we don't know how to source it. Growers saying we don't know how to find the market, all those sort of things. And we got them together and looked at what practical solutions we could work on together. One of those that came out very clearly was the Land Army, which we'll talk about, I'll come to later, which was about labour and growing more growers. And another thing that started off as conversations was the idea of people coordinating what they grow better, and with growers, between growers, but also working with buyers to work that out, which is, along with other things, kind of what started conversations about managed veg people. So I'm going to hand over to Katie, and then later on I'll talk about a bit more about how we actually went about setting out. Okay?
Can I ask just a quick question?
Yeah.
Was Feeding Manchester like a one-off event, or was it actually a project?
No, it started up, so we started Feeding Manchester, no, we always knew that we'd carry on, but the idea was that because we went and asked lots of people what they thought, by the time it got to the end of the first Feeding Manchester, everyone felt like they were Feeding Manchester, and no one really sees it as a kindling project anymore. They see it as, so although we organise it, so it's 3 times a year, it happens, but it's seen as everyone's, I think.
Okay.